Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello there, you guys. This is Kelly, and thank you for joining me today on In Her Voice. I'm so excited about my guest, Shereen Thor, and we are talking about what it means to embrace your rebel. Oh, it's so good. But before we get to our conversation and more about Shereen, I wanted to let you guys know that, as always, this episode is sponsored by Beautycounter. And I wanted to share a little bit of a different side of Beautycounter with you guys today because, of course, anytime you buy any of the safer skincare products and makeup using my link, that goes directly to support In Her Voice. This is how I am funding my purpose and passion and my dream of really getting this message of worthiness and living as visionary women and creating powerful change in the world gets out. Beautycounter is my way to support that. And I know that those of you who are listening are also visionary women, and you have your own dreams and you have your own big ideas to impact the world. And maybe you're looking for a way to support that. And if this is you, Beautycounter might be a great answer for you. I know it seems counterintuitive, but Kelly, I want to do XYZ, and that doesn't have anything to do with Beautycounter. But maybe it does. Maybe Beautycounter is a way to connect with people. Maybe Beautycounter is a way to create a side hustle for yourself so you have the means to go after those big dreams. If this is something that you might be interested in, I would love to talk with you about it. So I would encourage you to send me an email at kelly@kellycovert.com and just, put in the subject line, curious about Beautycounter, and we can set up a time to talk about what it would be like for you to become a part of my Beautycounter team. And that includes my support as a mentor and a coach, and also the support of the group and team that I am in, which is an amazing team. So again, if this is something that you're like, this is really interesting, I've never thought of that, or maybe you have thought of that, send me an email at kelly@kellycovert.com and we can start the conversation. So now to Shereen. Oh my gosh, you guys, you are gonna love her. Let me read you her bio. Shereen Thor is a host, author, rebel, movement starter, and serial artistpreneur who lives life on her terms and helps others do the same. Between her quirky comedic style and her in-your-face ability to catalyze others into empowerment, she cannot be ignored. Her career first started in stand-up comedy, where just after 2 short years of being in the game, she was quickly scouted by the likes of MTV, VH1, and E. While making people laugh was fun, it wasn't necessarily fulfilling. She was an inspiration junkie, obsessed with human behavior and what makes people tick. So while making people laugh, she worked on getting certifications in NLP and as a certified professional coach to cultivate her ability to change lives for the better. And since that time, she has gone on to found Awaken the Rebel, a movement that helps people stop settling for less and live an extraordinary life by their design. She wanted to take the power and efficacy of Tony Robbins and mix it with an edgy MTV feel so that it could capture the attention of those who think they are too cool for school. In her words, Awaken the Rebel is the gateway drug to the world of personal development. And oh my Lord, we dig deep. And I want you to sit back, put on your seatbelt, and just hang on because there is some really juicy conversation ahead. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. Shereen Thor. Welcome to In Her Voice. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I am super jazzed about our topic, our theme, so to speak, today of awakening your inner rebel, because I am a former good girl.
Oh.
And have all of the history of that. And I feel like the older I get, the more I'm letting go of that. And so like I'm super excited to just dive into this idea of rebel. And so I thought that we would start there. To you, when you talk about rebel, your inner rebel, what do you mean by that?
Well, if we're just gonna get super deep and woo-woo right off the bat,
Amen, sister. That's what we don't need any of the like pre stuff. Let's just dive into the deep end.
yeah, I mean, really, your inner rebel is your soul's true calling, your truth, your intuition, the part of you that has a deeper wisdom and knows what's up. And oftentimes we really can't hear our little sexy rebel on the inside because there's so much noise. It's just crazy. Society's noise, Instagram's noise, mommy and daddy noise, like, our culture. There's all kinds of reasons for us to sort of abandon the self
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of adhere to other people's expectations. And so my work is really just to support people in awakening the rebel, get in touch with that little hottie in there, see what she really wants.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's so interesting because you're using the word inner rebel to describe what I call inner voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think they're different names for the same thing. But the word rebel, and I have to be honest with you here, like I think of that as not being 100% what's the word? Like the first word that comes up is good,
Mm-hmm.
that there's something a little disrespectful, a little bit of a rule breaker, a little bit of someone who's not gonna stay in the lines. And then I don't know if I have a hard time sort of matching that
Yeah.
with my inner voice. So,
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
I guess I totally get that 100%, especially, you know what it is? I mean, if you're saying you're a reformed good girl, it's really like I'm speaking to all the good girls and I'm saying, listen to your inner bad girl. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just I'm just trying to help them be okay with disappointing people. Like sometimes you following your truth is actually going to look rebellious or disrespectful. Like my first really big awaken the rebel moment was when I finally realized I had adhered to my mother's expectations to a T and was fully miserable. And I finally decided to do what I actually wanted to do. It was like this quarter life crisis moment. And I quit a master's degree and started doing stand up comedy.
Oh my Lord. And your mother had a like
Oh, yeah.
conniption,
She
right?
was totally disappointed and totally embarrassed. She didn't want any of her friends to know. She felt like comedy was this like dirty, edgy industry that would be like a shame because we grew up, we're Egyptian. So it's very traditional. It's very religious.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like, yeah, sorry, dude. Gotta do it.
That's so fantastic. And I think at the core of who we are, there is a feeling, there is a concern that if we disappoint people, that we're not going to have people to love us. It goes
Hmm.
like really deep down into what it means to be loved and to be lovable as a
Hmm.
woman. And I think that that ties into the fact that in order to feel lovable, we have to love ourselves first, just as we are,
Hmm.
in all of its glory and non-glory.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like talk to me about that process, like about that moment or the period of time where you made that decision to walk away from everything that you should, quote unquote, should be doing
Yeah.
into something that just felt right for you.
Well, it was sort of like a process. Oftentimes with me, I am very much guided by negative emotions. So I recall basically I was like 24 and I had the degree and the job and the home. And I remember sitting in my big living room with my big screen TV and my cool backyard with my barbecue. You know, I got all these things because I wanted to have people over and I wanted my life to be fun. And I remember just sitting in my living room and going, is this it? Like having this moment of disenchantment with my entire life that I had checked all the boxes. I did the degree, the house, the job. I did everything my mom said I was supposed to do. And I remember just feeling a sense of disappointment, just like, whoa, I don't like this life. And I was like, man, this is not a good sign. I'm not even 25. I sound like Kevin Spacey having a midlife crisis in American Beauty. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is not a good thing. But I did not know what to do. I thought, you know, when you get a roadmap from your parents of how you're supposed to live and you do it, you think it's going to work. Like you think they have the answers. And so when I had that moment, I was like, I have literally zero clue what I'm supposed to do different. So luckily the universe hooked me up, and I had a best friend who kept nagging me to go to a personal development seminar. And like, she really wouldn't give up on me. I really told her no a bajillion times. She probably worked on me for 6 months before I finally, the inner good girl people pleaser, couldn't say no again. So I paid $500 for this seminar. And then I blew it off again for 6 months because I didn't really want to go. I only told her I'd go to just like stop bothering me. So anyway, I got there. It was a Thursday through Sunday kind of an endeavor. And I was not happy. Like, I didn't want to be there. I had my arms folded. I had my little hoodie on. I was too cool for school. Like, personal development seminars are for people who need help. And I'm good. Like, look at my good life. You know, like from the outside looking in, my life probably looked nearly picture perfect. Throw in like a husband and a kid and I would have been like, there can't be anything wrong, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So I think I sort of was fooling myself into believing I was good. And even though I secretly in that moment, like the inner voice or the inner rebel was like, this is not your life. Like, this is not the version of life you want. So luckily their return policy was that I would have to go through the whole seminar. And if I got nothing out of it, then they would give me my money back. But I at least had to complete the seminar to get there. So
like, you tried to get out of it.
I tried to get out of it. I was like, I don't even want to be
hysterical.
here, dude. I know, right? So thank God for return policies that rock. And I sat my little booty in that entire seminar. And they did a ton of stuff. They did closed-eyed exercise. They did exercises where you connect with peers. They did all kinds of cool stuff, like all the woo-woo stuff that I really hadn't been introduced up until that point, because I had also been raised to not have emotions, not express emotions, never show weakness and all that kind of stuff. So at this seminar, it was like I really got down, if we're talking like, let's go crazy woo-woo, right? So I'm into neurolinguistic programming, and I'm into like the conscious and the unconscious, and how the unconscious really is what runs your life and creates your results. And the conscious can only handle like 5 to 7 things at a time, but the unconscious can beat your heart when you're sleeping and literally run the world. And so I think what happened at this seminar, obviously I didn't know it at the time because I hadn't turned into a personal development geek yet. But what happened at the seminar was that I dipped down into my unconscious and I saw all the ways that I had been abandoning myself. So it wasn't just the checking the boxes for my mom. It was also, oh, here I am in corporate and they are looking at me like I am a bimbo if I'm too friendly. So let me abandon that part of me too. And let me become a little more harsh or rough around the edges. And so I just, in so many ways, to survive in the world, had abandoned the true essence of myself. And that was creating an apathy and a deadening in my entire life that I wasn't aware of. It was like the frog, the boiling frog. It was like a slow death. And so I didn't know it was happening. But at this seminar, it was just like, in all the ways that I was unconscious to that, I became fully aware of all the ways I had abandoned myself in my choices in my career and my choices about how I was going to be in the world. And it was like a pivot. It was like, okay, all right, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to fully choose to show up in the world as the truth of me. And sometimes that might hurt, but I can take a bullet. It was like me choosing to be in my strength and in my shine, as opposed to dimming my light to survive.
Oh, I love that story so much. So I'm going to follow up, but I just want to know, did you ask for your money back at the end?
Nope. I was like literally a raving fan. Like, I started drinking that Kool-Aid so hard. I was like obsessed.
All right, good. That's good to know. Okay, so this is what's coming up for me as I listen to you is that sort of this good girl syndrome, let's call it that. I just created that name. It shows up in lots of different ways. So for you, it showed up in like having this life like you thought that you were supposed to have and having the job and the house and the things and feeling totally dissatisfied. And for me, it's really interesting because I've always been now that I see it really in the light that you're explaining it, sort of a rebel when it comes to my career. I have 2 music degrees, which, aren't super practical, but that's really what I loved. I knew I wanted to do it. I did not have something to fall back on as my mom really wanted me to have. She was super disappointed that I didn't like get a music education degree or teaching degree or something like that. Right. And so then like, I've always sort of like, I just move at the drop of a hat to where I think that I'm supposed to be and it's right and it works. So in that way, I guess I was sort of embracing the rebel, but the other side of that story is, I had to be the good girl while I was doing all of that. So I had to toe the line. I, wore the right thing. I said the right thing. I didn't say the wrong things. I made everybody happy. I got good grades. And that's what rubbed me, right? Like that's where, as I've gotten older, I realized, I did all that stuff and I didn't have any fun doing that. And I felt shut down to who I really was. And so I share this only because I think that it can look different in different people.
I totally agree with that. And it's so interesting. Like, I actually really love hearing that you were a rebel and you really followed your truth. And and it's so interesting too, because it's like our parents are really just looking out for us. Like they actually just are afraid for our success. They want to make sure we're safe. That's their job,
Sure.
Like, and before I became a parent, I thought, I'm not going to be like all those other parents. Like, I'm going to help my kids soar, because I was this crazy girl who did stand-up comedy and went skydiving. Like, I was like an adventure, I was into the sort of like adrenaline junkie type stuff. But now that I'm a parent, I'm like, nope.
Right?
Yeah, like it's actually literally my job to keep my child safe. That's actually priority number 1. It's, so I'm like super weird about stranger danger and making sure that I know who's with my kid. And I'm like, oh, I can see how it's not in a parent's DNA to like push you out of the plane and help you fly that way. So like, it's just so good to hear that you were able to follow your truth and really believe in yourself. And I think that actually speaks to how they must have raised you. They must have really made you feel safe enough to go out, be free and fly out of the nest.
And I love what you say about the parenting DNA, because it's just a little side trail for us here, because I've had the same experience with my 2 sons, and my oldest has said to me on several occasions when he's like super mad at me because I won't let him do something he wants to do. He says to me, Mommy, you just love me too much. And he's mad. He's like crying. You love me too much. And I hear that and I think, like I can't love him less than I do.
Yeah.
And it gives you such a strong perspective to back to those moments in your life where maybe your parents put the kibosh on your dreams. Like they felt like the dream crusher, right? And you get it. Like you get it. And it really, I think, helped me change the story of what I experienced when I was growing up in my family. And that to me is really powerful. Like that's what allows us to choose something different as grown-ups. Don't you think?
I love that. Yes. But then it's really interesting what you had said about the good girl showing up in other ways. Like maybe you felt like because you kind of rebelled and went your own way, you then really had to, get the good grades or do the right thing or make a certain amount of money or whatever to kind of prove that it wasn't a bad decision.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was that. I think for me, it was more about the love piece. Like I really think that that's how I showed, that that's how I found that's how I felt like that's how I was going to get loved. Like people were going to like me more if I was good. The problem was is I just didn't like myself all of that much.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I was miserable and push all of the time. So, you know, I'm really interested in, for you, did you always feel like you had that edge to you even before this moment of dropping out of school and becoming a stand-up comedian?
That's a good question. I feel like you brought up a really good point of like, earlier you said something about like we all have just that deep desire to belong.
Yeah.
And so it actually is really difficult to go your own way or go against the grain or disappoint people or whatever. I feel like it's tough because I feel like I've always had an edge. So yes, that was there. And I certainly learned a pattern of abandoning myself in an effort to please others. That was just everywhere. I was definitely like the grunt in the family, and I learned quickly how to stay out of the, I don't know, stay out of the fires by just kind of making everybody happy. And so I just think it was so ingrained from being that way from a young age, like learning you survive and you'll be okay if you don't will your own desires into the world and if you just make everyone happy.
Yeah.
So I just think it's like really tough because you do have that deep sense of it and desire to belong. And yet if you abandon yourself in an effort to be loved, you won't feel good. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay,
Totally.
We need the belonging, we need the love, and we also need to feel loved for who we actually are.
So, okay. So here's the question, the big question, right? How do we do that? I mean, you dropped out of school and became a comedian. That's huge. Maybe someone listening today is not ready to do something that big and drastic.
Yeah.
How do they begin to find the pieces of them that have been abandoned?
That's a stinking awesome question because it doesn't have to be dramatic. In the same way, like the frog does a slow death, like doesn't realize that the water is like slowly becoming a boil and then dies. I think the same can happen with the awakening. I think you can do a slow awakening where you're not shocking yourself like a maniac.
You're not jumping out of a plane.
Yeah,
not required.
Yeah, you don't have to quit a master's degree and do stand-up comedy. You don't have to quit your job. But I think the simplest thing, and this is something that is so just like easy and simple and not profound, but will bring profound results, is doing morning pages.
I love morning pages.
Do you?
It's like the basis of my practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I really think that when you are by yourself and you're writing on pages that no one will ever see, and if you want confirmation that no one will ever see them, you can discard them after you're done. It's just a new conversation. Like when you really know, like, this isn't for anyone. This is actually just whatever comes. Then you say, I mean, man, there's been moments where I write things like, I actually hate this version of my life. Like, and I didn't even think that the day before. You know what I mean? The day before, I was just doing my thing. And then I wake up the next morning and I do my morning pages, and this clarity comes through of like, this actually doesn't work for me. Like, I need a lot more freedom. This is something that's fairly recent, you know, just realizing like I need to feel less like a stay-at-home mom and more like I'm able to express my rebel in the world. And like, that's just what I need. And that's not against my kids. That's actually for my kids. That's for them to see mama doing her thing and feeling free and then being joyous when she gets to spend time with them, as opposed to feeling like spending time with them comes at the expense of her soul's calling. You know,
oh my gosh, preach it, sister.
Right, girl.
I want to tell you this I resonate so deeply with this because when my kids were little, I worked, and I didn't work full time, but I still was out of the house a couple of days a week. I always had something like brewing or going on. I've always been very entrepreneurial and multi-passionate. And I recognized really quickly that if all I was doing was staying home with my kids, I was not as good of a mother.
Yeah.
And that's not how everyone is, and that's okay. But it's really about this place of like recognizing what you need to be able to show up in all the parts of your life in any given moment the way you're supposed to. And knowing that like I don't have to be a mother 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like that's okay. My kids are safe. Like right now, I'm here with you and I'm podcasting and I'm not parenting. And my kids are safe and they're fine and they will survive. And then when it's over, I'll go check in on them and then I'll be a mom again. And that's okay.
Love that.
Oh my gosh.
So many women need to hear this. Like, because this is the thing, but the good girl, and actually it's so interesting because I've been really obsessed with the book, The Artist's Way. And she's the big proponent of the morning pages. And she talks about how oftentimes we have self-destructive patterns. And these self-destructive patterns will actually look really honorable and dutiful and very socially acceptable to external people. So like the dutiful mother who decides that even though she knows that she desperately needs alone time to recharge her battery or needs time to be creative, but the kids need her and her husband needs her. And so what she ends up doing is basically self-sacrificing, which looks really good to everybody else. Everyone thinks like, what a good person. That's like the good girl syndrome. Like it really feeds that part of you that's dutiful and wants a pat on the back and is kind of a martyr. And guess what martyrs do? They die. You know what I mean? Like literally this woman is dying and it looks beautiful to the rest of the world. But like secretly, she's actually just being self-destructive by not self-advocating. I really think, I'm just going to go on a crazy soapbox right now. Like I really think this is what women need more than anything in this time in life, is that women need to learn to self-advocate for their spirit, for their soul, for their selves. I feel like women, my gosh, like it's our time. You know what I mean? Like hashtag me too and hashtag their time is up and all that stuff's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's all very exciting. And I think that we get in our own way before other people do because of generations of oppression and learning to silence our own voice.
Oh my gosh, Shereen, like I held my breath the whole time that you said that. Yes, it's about selfish, right? Like women are so afraid of someone calling them out as selfish because that means that we're bad at everything we do.
Right.
Right. If you're selfish, then you can't be a good mom. You can't be a good wife. You can't be a good friend, daughter, lover, whatever, employee, business owner, all of the things, right?
Yeah.
So how do we change the meaning of selfish? How do we take away that negative connotation? It's the same as the word rebel, like we were talking about at the beginning, right? Like
exactly.
To me, it has that sort of like negative edge to it. How do we take it away?
That's a great question. And I mean, I don't know. Someone else might give you a better answer, but I say we embrace it. I mean, I think that's partially why I started to do the rebel things. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, just let it be okay that some people are going to be disappointed, and just let it be okay that you're not being there for everyone else. Just let it be okay for you to be selfish for a moment. I just think, I don't know of another way. Maybe you and I could put our heads together and get creative about taking it away, but I don't know that that's possible. There's a part of me that just feels like, like when my husband is doing his thing, like when we first had a kid, he was working full time and he played football on Saturdays. In fact, we used to play football on Saturdays together until I got pregnant, and then I had to put me on bed rest. It was all very dramatic. So his life continued as usual, and mine stopped because I was on bed rest. And then, of course, I went to labor, and the postpartum phase is very intense, blah, blah, blah. And he never once felt bad that he would still go to football on Saturdays when I was at home with our new baby.
Yeah.
Like our learning curve has been for me to self-advocate and for him to be more considerate. So I feel like nobody calls dudes selfish. It's just a chick thing. Like we've been socialized to feel bad for being selfish because our role and our value comes from giving and loving and caretaking everyone else. And that's beautiful. Like I love that we do that. And we don't want to be a martyr. We don't want to die while we're doing it. We want to live while we're doing it. And so I feel like maybe that's the sweet spot, is that you figure out how selfish do I need to be to make sure that I am soul satiated and alive while I'm caring for a family or running a business or being a wife or whatever, you know?
Yeah. It becomes about owning selfish in a way that is empowering
Exactly.
and not being ashamed of that. So if I say I'm going to take a bath this afternoon in the daytime, maybe that would seem really selfish. But to me, I know it's going to fill me up and it's going to allow me to be more present when my kids come home from school.
Exactly.
And that is not selfish at all. And so it's just about seeing it in a completely new perspective and owning it and being like, yeah, yes, I'm selfish.
Yes.
And then I'm not. Right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right.
And that brings me to another thing, another word that I had written down before we even got on today. And that is duality. I feel in everything, the deeper I go in my own work, that I'm starting to identify that there are always in me at one time two opposing things. I'm vulnerable, yet that makes me strong. I am imperfect, yet I am perfect. And so I think that this is what we're getting at with this idea of selfish and not selfish. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Girl, that was deep. I just really enjoy that because, you know, people are so often like, this is part of the noise. We're looking at Instagram. We're looking at food porn. We're looking at, you know, physical fitness. We're just looking at things. And it's just like so in our senses, it's not in our soul. Like it's so not deep. So just as an aside, I'm totally tickled by you having a really deep thought right now. I just
good.
Literally, like I just need more of this in my life and I need to see more of this on social media if possible. Cause it's just, I feel like there's so much noise. It's just crazy. So anyway, back to the duality. Let's get to the point here, huh?
Take your time. Take your time, Shereen. We'll get there.
I think it's perfect. It was a perfect setup for just the idea that if you're selfish, you are also giving. I mean, maybe that's the way. So like, you know, that's the, oh girl, we did it. We put our heads together.
Yes. let me just say that again. If you are selfish, you are also giving. You can't be one without the other.
Right.
Oh,
you did it, girl. You set that up.
We both did it. We both did it. I feel like I'm going to write down the time on this, 26:59, because this is going to be the clip. If you are selfish, you are giving. You can't be one without the other. And I think when we begin to see that, it's the same thing. The good girl and the rebel.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes,
they're
exactly.
both. We are both. And I am a good girl and I'm a rebel. I am selfish and I am giving. And so it's about really coming at it from a completely different paradigm, really.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I'm getting chills. This is so good.
Oh, so good. All right. So how do you nurture your inner rebel? How do you, Shereen, nurture? And then what can we do to nurture?
I mean, simply, I just feel into what I desire. And the more I do that, the more is revealed to me slowly but surely. Like, yeah, it's just a slow comeback to the self. And I think when we do that, I mean, and literally some of that is just morning pages. You know, like I'm writing my morning pages and I'm seeing what do I truly desire. And then that brings consciousness to it. And then I think, honestly, Kelly, I think the second there's consciousness, the universe will begin to support you. Because I had Luke and he turned 1 and I was like, all right, I'm doing this mom thing. I feel ready. I feel ready for more excitement in my business, excitement in my career. I actually want my career to take a more creative turn. So I don't know that I want to do stand-up comedy again, but I want something different. And so I reached out to an old comedy friend. This is so random, but his name is Maron. He's like semi-famous. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but
I don't. I'm sorry. I'll say yes, and then you.
No, he has a podcast, WTF, with Marc Maron. It's very popular.
Oh, I have heard of that. Only the WTF part. Yeah, that's funny.
So that's him. He's a stand-up comedian, did this podcast. Obama was on his podcast.
That's amazing.
He's done books. Like it's very, very interesting. And so I reached out to him. I literally haven't talked to him in over a decade. And we ended up having lunch. And it was like, I didn't even know what I wanted from it. You know what I mean? all I wanted was to connect with him because I feel like he did stand-up comedy and sort of accidentally fell into self-help by virtue of real conversations on his podcast. And I feel like I really do self-help, but I'm sort of like, I err on the side of a comedian. Like, I'm not a guru. That's not my style. You know, I'm a little more like real talk and practical advice and no BS more than I am like, listen to my answers. Like, I know things. I'm not that person, you know? So I'm like, there's something there, some resonance. I was like, I don't even know what I want. I just want to reconnect. So I did. And that was fun and that was good. And, you know, sometimes I text him annoying questions about like books and how I should write them. I'm sure he regrets meeting with me.
Doubtful.
But then, I think it was like 2 weeks later, a friend of mine who I know, like, man, for almost 15 years, Brian Moot, he moved out here to start being the host on 97.1 amp radio because apparently Carson Daly left the radio station. And so now he's one of the morning radio hosts with two other people, and they do this show called The New Guys. And so I was like listening to the radio, dropping my kids off at school. And then I texted him like, hey man, I just heard you on the radio. I was like, so good to hear you. This is how I'll get like my dose of my friend from now on, since we kind of had lost touch at that point. And out of nowhere, he goes, you know what? You should get on my podcast. Like, and I'm thinking, this is hilarious. Like, I'm literally just saying hi. And out of nowhere, he's like, you need to be on my podcast. We should co-host a show. There's a radio station down south that might want our show. And I'm like, what are we even talking about right now? Like, I literally don't know how we went from, hey man, good to hear your voice, to we're doing a show together, like 0 to 60. But it's like, I had already come into my own awakening. I had already felt the desire in my soul to get back into creativity, to get back into things that I sort of unfortunately, I can't say had to abandon, but because my pregnancies were so hard with bed rest, it literally is like, don't leave the house, your baby's going to die. So like, I sort of had to stop my life while I was baby making for the last like 4 years. And then it was like, okay, like we have two, we got a girl and a boy, we're good. Let's get back to like being an alive person who does things. So, yeah, anyway, my point is morning pages, listen to your soul, and then just like watch the freaking magic happen. It's just, you know, that's just kind of, it sounds so woo-woo, but I cannot deny that has happened time and time again for me.
Oh my gosh. I'm totally with you on that. And I almost feel that it's this place of expecting it to happen, like not just waiting, but do the work and then expect it to happen. And when you're living in that expectation, when you're living in that place of like, yeah, what's coming at me today, it's going to be freaking amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. And when you say do the work, like I want everyone listening to get what the work is. The work is being honest with yourself and accepting yourself fully. It is so easy for me to go, I can't do comedy again. That's crazy. Like, I'm a mom. Comedians travel. I can't travel. Like, that's the voice of the good girl. Yeah. Don't do what you want to do because it's not okay for XYZ reasons. Other people need you. That's the abandoning myself conversation. And so for everyone listening, your work is to make sure you do not abandon yourself, that you listen and you nurture in the same way you would like take care of a 3-year-old and give them the food they need or whatever they need. You take care of yourself too. You have an inner child that needs you to listen and care, you know?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I will just share this. I think this was from another guest that I had who was talking about similar things, like this idea of letting go of your inner good girl. And she was just talking, I had this huge aha moment. And that is, I do have an inner child, and I've been parenting that inner child of my own like my mom would.
Oh.
Instead of how I would.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, that's why it felt bad. Because that's, you know, I was parenting myself the way my mom parented me. And it makes sense, right? Because that's how we learn that. But then I realized I don't have to do that anymore. I don't parent my kid the way my mom parented me for good reason. And I don't have to do that to myself anymore either. And that includes talking to myself in a negative way. It includes, you know, having these conversations that are, like you say, the abandoning yourself conversations.
Yeah.
So really, ladies, make a decision about how you want to nurture and parent and mother yourself.
Yeah.
And that will change your life. Change your life. Oh, Shereen, this is so good. I feel like we're just like tapping in to the beginning of this. And so I'm feeling like somewhere down the line, you're going to have to come back on In Her Voice. And we're going to have to jam again about this and even more because it's just so good. But in the meantime, why don't you share with my listeners where they can find you, where they can connect with you and learn about what you're up to in the world?
Well, if you want to find a little queen rebel over here, awakentherebel.com is the easiest place to find me. And yeah, you would just check it out, join the little email list, and then I can communicate with you. And, sometimes I do retreats and sometimes I offer coaching and sometimes I just send out podcasts that I'm doing and, that's where I play.
Awesome. And we'll put links to all that stuff and Shereen's website on the show notes, and you'll be able to click right through on whatever podcast app you are listening to. So, Shereen, I'm sure especially if you've done your morning pages today already, this will be an easy answer for you. In your life currently, what is your inner voice asking of you?
My inner voice is asking me to honor my artist more and more. My mommy taught me that I couldn't be an artist. I had to be a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. It's crazy. That's why I founded Awaken the Rebel. And I've really abandoned the artist in a lot of ways, doing motherhood and entrepreneurship. And yeah, she's just coming back with a vengeance. And also like when I say honor my artist, I don't even mean just like do shows, do comedy. I mean like honor the fact that I am an artist, that I am a creative type. So even if I do want a job part-time, it has to be a creative job. Like I cannot be abandoning myself in the ways that I used to when I would work in corporate to make money and not let myself be the truth,
Mm-hmm. I know. And I feel that and I love it. And I would like to honor the artist that I feel in you, like literally feel it's there. And I'm excited to see what she has to say because it's going to be pretty freaking amazing.
Thank you.
You're
Seriously,
welcome.
loved being on with you. You're so amazingly wonderful at what you do, and your message is so important, especially at this time. And so, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope that this episode resonated with you and you are ready to go out and live life on your own terms. If you really love this episode, do me a favor and take a screenshot of your phone of the podcast while you were listening to it and share it on social media, and be sure to tag me at Kelly J. Covert. You can do that on Instagram. You can do that on Facebook. And you do not even know how much it means to me when you do this, because that is how more people come to find In Her Voice. And I'm so thankful that you are so willing to share your time and to share your space on your social media feed with me. And so I will be on the lookout for those screenshots. Thank you guys so, so much. And don't forget, if you are curious about becoming a beauty counter consultant on my team, I have some space and time open to talk with you. So shoot me an email, kelly@kellycovert.com. As always, I want to remind you, you matter. We need you in this world doing the work that you were born to do. You are worthy.